Hey dudes, welcome back to another episode of our Rhomas Men's Team podcast. You are about to listen to one of our prior team meetings. If you ever want to join one of our live sessions that we have every Monday and Friday, head over to rhomas.com. That's RHOMAS.com and put your email in and we will send you a live link every time we record. We generally record on Mondays and Fridays. So if you ever want to be on the actual podcast, like we bring men up all the time to talk about their goals, talk about their obstacles, etc., head over to rhomas.com. And then also, if you want to help support the channel grow and also have access to exclusive content, book reviews, extra whiteboard sessions, etc., and some coaching sessions, head over to patreon.com and support us. We would love it. But if not, no biggie. We'll see you on the live sessions. Later, dudes. Enjoy this podcast. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team Podcast. Wes Rollins and Mr. Matt McCusker. What's going on, brother?
What up, man? How you doing?
Good, man. Wait, I think we got to share. We got to share the conversation pre-podcast. Chia seed pudding.
Yeah.
What's the down low on that?
I'm finishing off a big Tupperware full of it right now. Brittany made me some, so it sat. I left it, and today I'm just eating it all. So it's pretty good.
Oh, what's the? So what are the must-haves in your pudding?
Honestly, I'm pretty lax. I used to make it pretty much. I used to just make it with like either coconut or almond milk and chia seeds with like a little bit of cinnamon. But Brittany, I feel like more so, and I could be skewed, but I feel like women are typically trying to enjoy things that are delicious all the time. So Brittany made me one with like raspberries, strawberries, ground like into a puree. So I prefer banana. If I like puree bananas and put them in that with some like, coconut or almond milk, that's my ideal chia pudding, but raspberry strawberry is pretty good.
Oh, you puree all of that stuff and put it in? You don't just put it in whole?
I mean, I puree it that way. Like it like forms like a base and then it just sits in there. I'm a big tapioca pudding head from back in the day. So the chia seeds are like they're definitely, I discovered them and I'm like, oh, hell yeah. So I used to eat Cozy Shack tapioca pudding. Like I used to eat a lot of it.
Really?
Yeah. Pretty disgusting what I used to do.
We were talking about the Whole Foods chia seed. I'm sorry, I'm gonna pour my water. Dude, by the way, I gotta get you one of these.
That fucking rules, dude.
Yeah. It's I've been looking, I would look for years for a gallon water bottle that wasn't plastic and that could keep the liquid cold for, it basically is a vacuum seal, big ass water bottle. I love it.
It's like a scuba tank.
That's right. It kind of looks like, yeah, it's a scuba tank.
I always lose them. When I have big water bottles, I leave them places.
Really?
Yeah, every time. I had a 64 ouncer. It's funny. I bought a sectional couch, and they're like, "Do you want an OtterBox water cantina for 64 ounces?" And I was like, "That comes with it." I was like, "Okay." I had it, and it was pretty cool. And then I left it somewhere, and the water sat in it for like it sat for a weekend, and I was like, "Ew, man, that water's been in there for a weekend." And I just kept putting it off, and the water just sat there for it went for 3 months, and I was like, "I'm throwing this thing out." But I need to start keeping that on my person. Even a camel pack, honestly, as crazy as those things look, it's like I know I can take care of a school bag, so I might have to start camel packing. I like that.
That'd be legit, man.
But it's one with just only water. There's nothing else it can hold.
And like the non-hiking camel pack usage is even better.
Yeah, like a JanSport, just like all day hydration. Just have it in I'd have a tube in my mouth at all times. But no, that's one thing too, man. It's like for me, it's sleep, water, eating. I'd say sleep, exercise. Well, no, water's more important. But dude, when I slack on water, it sucks.
Oh yeah,
it sucks.
No, I basically instantly get a headache if I'm dehydrated.
Yeah, my brother is all. Did you ever hear about dry fasting? Where you just drink water for 24 hours.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. My brother was like, "Dude, it's so good for you." I was like, "I'm not. I'm good."
Which brother?
Tom.
Wow. I've never heard of it.
Well, this was something I used to do a lot. And there's a propensity, I feel like, especially in my family, for doing these things of extreme action. Being like, I'm going to fast for my cousin fasted without food for 7 days.
Yeah.
I used to do stuff kind of similar where I would just my routine would be helter skelter. And then I would just be like, I'm going to launch into this massively insane experiment, when in reality what I've been getting into lately and the thing I've been preaching has been or at least I've been trying to, of just make the radical change your daily, you've said this forever, just setting up a daily routine rather than I'm going to do a 7-day fast once and then stop. It's like, just, eat half vegetables, half meat and starches.
Right.
That's kind of all you need to do. But it's easier to be like sucked into the challenge of like an extreme thing. But if you think about it in the long term, it's like, I mean, that was cool for a week, but how's that working now?
Right. Yeah. No, I think, and I think a lot of men, including myself, fall into the category, into the challenges, phases and opportunities. So I totally understand it. But yeah, I would say if I look back in general, I think the majority of results that people produce are produced from habits, not from sprints.
Yeah, exactly. That was, dude, that's been a deficiency in my life forever, of just trying to form a daily routine and stick to it. It's like, it's really interesting now that I'm kind of tracking it and trying to see like what gets in the way of like, am I sitting down every night and writing out my next day's plan? I'm about 50-50 on that. Then it's like during the day, I'm looking at my schedule. I'm like, I'm not doing the little thing that's designed, this little space is designed for. Why not? And it's usually like something can pop up and it'll throw me off. And it's like, you can either honor that or just completely go against it. Like, to be more clear, it's like, I'm here. It's me, Brittany, the kid, me, Brittany, Maya. And, it's like, say Brittany falls under some sort of like spell of like kind of a bad mood, or like, she's frustrated or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's a serious temptation to be like, all right, I'm going to completely adjust I'm going to deviate from my schedule. And this isn't like cut and dry, because sometimes you really do have to be like, all right, I got to shave off a half an hour, get this situated. But the pattern can be like, all right, a negative emotion is coming up, in my household. I'm going to throw away all the stuff that I have to do just to tend to this, so it's like,
right.
It's one of those things where you kind of have to like, I've been trying to me, I don't really find there's any hard and fast rules, because if I can just be like, tough shit, I have my schedule, that'll start to create some sort of fallout. So it's been something I've been dealing with. And even if I have my own day where I'm having kind of a funk where I'm just like, oh, well, I'm going to do this thing or that. So, that's been, hopefully that makes sense, but that's been like really examining where, I deviate from, and what's that little point that kind of knocks me off my, the stuff that I set out that I wanted to do. Like, how do I get deviated from that? And it's not just always the other person. It's like, really, and this is something I read the other day I thought it's awesome. It's like a lot of people get stuck, especially in relationships, with this thing like, if this person would change their behavior, then I wouldn't feel this kind of way. And it's like, it's a way, it's not their behavior, it's the way you're relating to their behavior. So I've gotten pretty good at watching things that used to elicit some sort of like uneasy feeling in me, watching it and being like, all right, let me know if I can help, but here I'm going back down to doing this thing. That way the whole unit doesn't get like destabilized and whatnot.
100%. Has meditation helped you with that, of observing and not engaging?
Yeah. I mean, the meditation helps big time, but I really do think I've been trying to throw that back. That was something I kind of completely, was skimping myself on, but the meditation helps a lot. But I swear to God, man, the ACT stuff, the acceptance commitment therapy stuff I've been learning about and like building programs around, because the guy, Stephen Hayes, his whole idea was like, he wanted to take these Eastern philosophies and these like wisdom traditions, and the phrase he uses, like, pull them at their joints and like really see what's going on and like how they're working, and then like study those little processes. And he even calls them like leverage points, like to see like the exact, like to see, like, say like, if you're avoiding some sort of like, uncomfortable thought or feeling by like just cutting off an aspect of your life that would be rewarding, because like by doing that would create these other situations you'd rather not deal with, so you sacrifice the things you find valuable just for regulating your internal state.
Right.
And the idea is like, once you start seeing how you're like, that's a lot of people can't come to grips with the fact that's what they're actually doing, because it's too painful to realize, like, nobody wants to be wrong on that level. So the idea is finding these leverage points where you can be like, how can you actually make it apparent to yourself that's what you're doing? And you're not like, like I could easily be like, well, I have to make sure everything's cool here. I have to make, that's more important. And it's like, it is more important, but it's like, you also need to make sure you're cool and you're not, selling yourself short, because all you're going to do is build resentment.
Right.
So hopefully that, I don't know if that makes much sense, but it's like really identifying. I've been identifying the points at which I deviate and what I'm thinking in those moments. And for me, ACT has helped more than meditation, but it's like, again, ACT is very similar to meditation, where you're very much observing yourself in the present moment, and like how much time are you spending outside versus, outside the present moment versus like in your head and thinking and all that stuff.
Yeah, I've got to get into it, because you've been telling me about it for months now. I just haven't taken the initiative to really jump deep into it. I watched the what was it, a TED Talk that you sent me?
Yeah.
What was that TED Talk, so people can can see it if they want to see it.
Oh man,
I remember.
if you just Google Stephen Hayes's TED Talks, it would be the first one. I don't know what his name because he has like a bunch of them. Fuck, it's something about. If you type Stephen Hayes TED Talk love, it'll pop up. That's
Okay.
that's the best I can do.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at your text messages. Here you go. Stephen Hayes. Let's see, where is it? Stephen Hayes Turning Toward the Healing Power of Human Consciousness. Is that the one?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think that. I mean, is that the one? I don't know. I have no idea.
Is it psychological flexibility? How love turns pain into purpose? Stephen Hayes.
That's it.
That's the one.
That's the one.
TEDx University of Nevada.
I mean, dude, this is like, because I'm designing my group protocol. So this is like you can't really read this, but this is kind of the thing they're saying meditation helps is psychological flexibility. So this is like how you can measure that. And it's really cool because it gets people away from, the general idea of like, I'm going to walk into a psychiatrist. They're going to ask me a bunch of questions like, have you not been sleeping well for the last 2 weeks, which, that could be a sign of like multiple psychological disorders, personality disorders, whatever. And what they're trying to get away from so much just labeling like, oh, you have this. And now, that's part of your whole identity. Like, I'm depressed. I have depression. I suffer from depression. And this is more of like, forget about the labels, whether you have depression, anxiety, like pretty much they're saying like almost everybody experiences that at some point. So it's not something you should really build your entire identity around, if you can help it. But so they have like little scales. It's like, how much do you pay attention to the present between 1 and 10? Like I spend most of the time kind of thinking about the past or future, or like I'm actively engaging in the present moment without like judgment, blah, blah, blah. There's like, are you acting in your values? Are you taking committed action along with your values? And it goes through all these different scales, and that's what they're trying to build up in people rather than just labeling them. Because if you can do this first, and then, if someone's living like, I'm doing all the stuff I'm doing, I'm not deficient in any area of my life in terms of like the things I want to do. Then you can start thinking like, okay, now there's some sort of disordered, like you can say like there's a mental disorder because you are doing the things you're supposed to, does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Well, Jordan Peterson was one of the first guys who brought this to light for me. And because, I feel like as best as I can tell, the reflex in the psychology world, or just when I read articles and so on, it automatically defaults to depression or something that's clinically diagnosable, versus what Jordan Peterson taught me was, no, maybe you're just not doing good, right? Like maybe you're not putting the right effort into the right things, the sleep, eating, treating people well, doing well in your career, all of those things. And you are now just experiencing your place in the hierarchy. And if your place in the hierarchy is congruent with your thoughts about yourself in that hierarchy, then that's fine. That's not called depression. That's just called you're losing. But that's okay. It's important to recognize that you're just losing, because then when you recognize that you're losing, then you can recognize that you could win if you fix those little errors. Versus what he was saying depression is that if you happen to be doing really well and your brain does not equate it to doing well, you've got all the things, you've got the good relationships, you've got your health, you've got your family, you've got your work and so on, and you still don't think you're doing well, that's some sort of imbalance. So at least that's how I interpret what he was saying.
Yeah, and this would be more or less like, this would take even a person like that and examine like, are you doing the things that you truly value? Why aren't you? And like what area? So yeah, it's something, dude. I mean, it's kind of freaky to think about, but like there is a chance that, and we've passed through a lot of different paradigms with, health, physical health. Mental health is a relatively new field. So there is a chance that like the the massively, the option right now is this massive pharmaceutical route. There's a chance that it's going to come out that like, it's not, I mean, it kind of has in a lot of research that it's not as effective as people think it is.
Sure.
That's I mean, I almost, that's a ridiculous, I'm not trying to have like a pun, but that is a tough pill to swallow, dude. It's like, like they were giving you this idea, and a lot of it they're saying is based off of trying to blunt your emotional states so that you don't feel pain, when in reality, that's supposed to be, that's your intuition. That's your body telling you like something's out of line here. Like, I don't, we're like, they talk about following excessive rules, like, being like, well, I have to do this. I have to, I have to do this to get ahead. And it's like, that's just a rule you follow. That's not necessarily in line with your values. So sorry, I don't want to dominate this with ACT talk, because it's just what's on the mind right now.
No, I think it's great. Well, it probably feeds and dovetails nicely into the topic that we want to discuss today.
Yeah.
It's just when you talk about ACT and meditation, et cetera, all of these things are fundamental to existence. At least in my opinion, they can apply to all different domains. So what's the topic today, brother?
Well, I was right now I've been thinking about like an informational diet. Specifically, I was, thinking about this podcast. And it is interesting when you think about and it's not just the person who does this. It's like if you start looking at things, think about people's main mediums for information. It's usually like Facebook, Google, YouTube. I mean, that's just, they're the vendors pretty much. They're the vendors. They have algorithms. All they're focused on doing is keeping you engaged. That's the algorithm's purpose. And when it starts to do, it's just start feeding you stuff they think you'll like. They pretty much usually kind of like, sometimes they'll send you stuff they know kind of gets you like kind of like titillated, like political stuff that kind of like, like liberal owned by this, whatever. So really I started thinking about like, informational diets and how we are kind of subject to, like, I would say one of the first generations who are just like getting tons of information in a way that we've never really had. It's not really been studied. We don't exactly yet know how all this information is like kind of affecting us. And I was kind of likening it to like sugar, like when they have those like in like a third world country when like Coca-Cola finally breaks the market, and now like Uzbekistan has Coca-Cola sweet tarts and all this stuff, and you just watch like people who were in good physical condition just like plummet. Obesity goes, because it's like there's no knowledge around refined sugar. These are people who are just tasting it and being like, this is great, without any long-term knowledge of what it is, what's going on. So I was really thinking about this podcast, and like I was kind of like thinking how ideally it would serve as kind of informational vegetables. It's kind of like eat your veggies,
I like it.
right?
Nice, man.
Information, just like, this is your veggies, dude. Gotta
Speak
have
my language.
Well, it's important, man. And it's like, it's people are going to have to think about of like, we're usually just turning things on and being like, being entertained and distracted. But it's like, what kind of atmosphere is all that information and that very specific bent that you're putting into your brain? What kind of mind is that creating, and how? And it, like, you can't tell me that it's not contributing to your mental state.
Nope. You're 100% right. It is for sure creating the foundation for your mentality, your thoughts, your intellect, etc.
Yeah, man. So that's kind of something I like about this podcast a lot. This is the goal, for me, at least in terms of the value that I like to create, is like, what is something, and again, it's not like, it is good to have just like listen to fun stuff, be entertained, but also like, it would be nice to throw a little something in there to that's kind of keeping you on track, and just reporting into, just hearing about people actually pursuing very concrete goals, tasks, and like relating back to actual like performance, and, just the idea of creating value. I think it's a great thing people can anchor themselves to.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a whole bunch of great stuff in there. I mean, I spent some time with a friend recently, and I just watched him every single time, because the majority of life is waiting for something. Like, let's just say we're going to go out to lunch and we're waiting for the server to come, et cetera. The amount, every single microsecond of his day was immediately pulling out his phone and either engaging in something like eating, but if he wasn't eating or doing something like very deliberately, it was every single microsecond was focused on just scrolling. And that's just so fascinating, just sitting there scrolling for hours. So I asked him, I said, dude, how many hours do you think a day, you go on social media? And his response, he's like, honestly, I think 5 to 6 hours a day. And this guy works full time. I'm like, 5 to 6 hours a day. Number one, how's it even possible? And then number two, so I said, what are you typically consuming on there? And he's like, dude, if I had to be honest, he's like, just whatever they put in front of my face. And typically it's like funny animal videos. Like, literally, this is a grown man, funny animal videos, or some sort of like women or something like that, just constant scrolling. And me, cause I don't really use social media barely at all. Just watching his thumb and fingers just go like this for hours, like literally for hours. I don't understand how that's even possible. So I think what you're saying is very, very much needed. And then it's what's the intentionality around your actions. So yeah, of course you can have entertainment, but there's a big difference between, for instance, like I'm watching Hamilton right now, the Broadway show. It's now on Disney Plus. So I watched half of it. Like, would you rather watch entertainment that is literally at the top of the hierarchy of entertainment, one of the best Broadway shows that ever been produced in history, or would you rather be subject to some sort of like, Donald Trump feed that's getting fed to you on Facebook or Instagram? Both of those things could be, a form of entertainment, but I would argue one is going to serve you way better purpose in the entertainment category than the other one would.
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah. And also too, and this is something I pay attention to big time in myself, is like, dude, I wake up and I'm like rolling over to my phone without thinking. Like, I want to pick it up. There's things there. Like, it's almost like there's like unopened things that could be there. And it's like this weird part of it's almost like a gathering part of your brain where you're like, there might be an email. Like, there could be something I don't know about on here. And I pick it up and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, this is important. I need to check in with this stuff. It's very, having a digital presence is very important. And like, in reality, it's like, it would serve me so much better to like, and I did this today. I was like, I'm going to, first thing before I start engaging this, like, and a lot of times when you're looking at your screen of your phone, you're using the problem solving part of your brain. So like, you're just sitting there because you have a task to perform. Every time you pick up your phone, you're like this, here's a thing that's glowing. There's something new there. Let me see that. Am I going to click this? No, I'm going to click that one. So you're using this problem solving aspect of your brain that like really kind of cuts you off from more deep reflective thought. And they've actually, I think I've talked about that before. They've studied this in terms of like reading comprehension, like reading paper versus reading on a phone or computer. And like, it's not up for debate. But yeah, man, it's like, you take the, just forget about the fact that like social media is addictive. It relies on like dopamine feedback loops and all this stuff. It's a serious addiction, and just like your cell phone. Like, dude, same thing your friends doing. I'll catch myself. I'll get like it's like micro downtime. Like, I'll be doing something and then like, I'll get like a second where I'm like, I should check my phone real quick. And like, dude, it's just like, I just will disappear into like this weird loop of like, and I stop and I'm like, what was that? What did I do that for? And what did I get out of that? And it's like, absolutely nothing. I just got purely distracted and sucked into this thing. And then, some ad came up for like sleep purple mattress or something. And I'm like, oh, I get that. Yeah, man. It's like, it's really, I think it's going to be important to really kind of, get some elbow room among all of this torrent of information and have people kind of figure out how to, interact with this, which is truly a wonder of the world, the internet, in a way that doesn't absolutely subsume them and consume their life, So that's been something I've been thinking about a lot.
Have you ever done any experiments around it? Because I've done a few, but I'd love to hear if you've done any experiments around cutting off useless information.
I've actually had some success doing like, just simple things of deleting any kind of app from my phone, because I for some reason don't access, like I actually deleted my whole Facebook, which was awesome. I highly recommend everyone just deleting it. Even if it's just delete it and start it over. Cause then you got to like, your feed's not just like,
that's a good one. Dude, I might do that.
It was nice, man. And it felt weird. I was like, oh my God, there's just pictures of me. And it's like, you're building this thing that you're like, I can't betray myself in all my pictures, but it's like, you can. I deleted all of them. And it's like, I still remember stuff. So it's like, I deleted everything on Facebook. I deleted my Twitter. I deleted my Instagram and started all of them fresh. So now like my feed is just like 12 people. And it's like, I don't have Facebook on my phone either, because I just can't have it on my phone. I know
I don't have it either. None of that or Instagram on my phone.
Yeah, I do have Instagram now, which I have to cut that back. It was like, it's fun because I get people who email me or who message me about Matt and Shane's Secret podcast. So it's like, I want to talk to them and everything. I think it's fun. It's nice. It's fun to banter and go back and forth. But the trick with Instagram is I don't really follow anybody, because if you follow somebody, that creates that endless feed. If you follow like 5 or 6 people, you scroll down, you're like, oh, 3 pictures, I'm already caught up. So it's like, if you follow hundreds of people, you're just creating this never ending like rainbow road for yourself of just like down. So I've been pretty good at that. So to answer your question, that's been what I've done. And it wasn't even an experiment. It was just like, I'm being controlled by these things. I'm not in control of whether I look at them or not. And it was when I was going into grad school anyway. So I was like, look, I gotta like lay low online for a little bit. So I deleted it all. And it was honestly it was like one of the best things I've ever done.
Yeah. Well, do you think it can be valuable for certain social media platforms?
Yeah. I mean, it can. It's like, not even it can. It is valuable. It's a valuable tool if you want to work online, and it is kind of it's a necessary evil. But it's like, can you utilize it without it totally subsuming you, or like you falling? It's like Medusa. Like, can you look at it without turning into just like a drooling idiot, like scrolling down the thing? It's like, it's a good thing to use, but it's like, I feel like for me, the only antidote against it was like just having things. I mean, it's almost like a drug in a way where it's like, they say
Oh,
like
100%.
people can't just quit drug. Like, if you're like, I'm going to be sober, say like, oh, I did cocaine for 15 years. Now I want to be sober and I'm just going to stop doing cocaine and keep everything as normal. It's like, I'm just going to be a guy who's walking around thinking about doing coke all day, whether I
Right.
do it or not. I'm just thinking about it all day. So really the thing that helped me was like pursuing projects that I'm so interested in that it kind of eclipses the need to go on social media. And almost is
Yes.
weird, dude. So when I was off Facebook for a year, you get back on and you see people who are like, it's part of their daily routine to post. And like, kind of like, I read this one article where they're saying posting on social media isn't so much communicating as it is like shouting from a mountaintop.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are a bunch of other people shouting from mountaintop.
Yep.
So it's like you get back on and you're like, this is part of it's really strange when you take time off and get back on. You're like, this is weird. It's weird people are doing this. And it's like, it's a weird part of a people's life and identity. Cause it's like, there's always, you have your biological self, then you have like your story of yourself, the things you're pursuing. And then you have this like digital arm of that. That's like, you kind of curate. It's weird. It's a very strange, abstract thing. And it's like, again, it has no real value other than the fact if you want to become like an influencer or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very interesting because it's just fascinating to me. I've always been super introverted and very, one-on-one or one to few in terms of my relationships, because you can customize the communication, because I think that's what should happen with communication. So I've got this other friend who feels the need to post about religion and Donald Trump pretty much constantly.
Awesome.
And he came, he came to me recently and he said, kind of angry. And he's like, well, I posted this about Trump because this is what he's doing. And it's just facts. And 3 people unfriended me. And I thought these people were my friends. It's like, dude, like, yes, they are your friends, and had you sat down with them and intelligently discussed your point of view over like coffee or a lunch, and you could hear their feedback, etc., you'd probably still be Facebook friends. And the funny thing is, now that you're not Facebook friends, it's probably going to put a dent in your actual relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I don't understand. People need to understand that. Just what you said is perfect. Shouting from a mountaintop. Well, when you have 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 people following you, and you just shout something out, the probability that you're going to make all of them happy, right, is basically zero. The probability that you're going to offend at least one of them is very high, very high, especially the more emotionally charged the topic in general. So I just don't understand. I don't understand the risk reward of it. I definitely understand it for business. I definitely understand it for like teams. Hey, we're going to do this thing and we're going to accomplish. That's why I like Facebook groups.
Sure.
We're going to do this thing and it's for this intentional thing. And the communication within this thing will only be geared towards that. I'm not going to comment on religion or politics or whatever else. It's all within the intention of this group. So I don't understand it. And I wish, and I think a lot of people know that in their gut, but they get on this emotional sprint, and it's like, oh, I just saw this thing on the news, or I just had this thing happen, or the riots are happening, so I feel like it's my obligation to go and stand up for something. And I just don't think a lot of those posts are really well thought out, and they do much more detriment to your actual relationships than they do good.
Yeah, man. No, dude, I totally agree with that. And it's social media is like great. It's super useful. It is, it's a great idea. It's an awesome thing. The thing where I think they get people is it kind of dangles this carrot, and maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously, of like the chance of massive social approval, which is intoxicating. If you do have stuff go viral, if you ever had something, it's like it's absolutely intoxicating. It's amazing. It's pretty amazing. It's awesome. Problem is, it's like, we can laugh at like all of the baby boomers and senior citizens who go and just kind of like pour pennies into slot machines and pull those arms down.
Right.
That's it's like, forget about that. We have that in our pocket now. So think of a person who can walk into a casino, start betting, and just walk away. Like, I'm going to do this for, I'm going to do this for 30 minutes and leave. I think it's the minority of people who can handle that kind of, that some sort of, that's such a strong dopamine, dopamine, I forget how you say the word, but like a dopamine drive. I think it's dopaminergic, a dopaminergic drive of just going into a casino and just like all the lights, all the flashing things. And again, I've said this, I think, before. They design social media apps with the help of, and from the inspiration of, people who design casinos. Like there's very serious tactic, or there's extensive tactics in terms of like keeping somebody in a seat that goes into the design of the room. That's why casinos are typically round, to give people the impression it's kind of limitless. There's no windows, there's no clocks. You're trying to throw people in a flow state where they kind of detach from like normal time and reality. Social media has that. They pull that refresh. You know, when you pull the thing down and it refreshes and goes, like the screen goes down and then something new pops up. That's directly from slot technology. It's the same thing. They go boom, and the thing you get a result. They do that to keep people kind of addicted. And people have come out and said this. So it's like, yeah, man, it's like, can you know, like we all have a slot machine in our house. It's like, can you not play that? It's hard. It's, you know, it's a tall ask, especially when no one's telling you what it is. They're just being like, connect with your loved ones. Don't you love your family?
Right.
You know, tell them about how you feel about politics. It's your right and duty. That was the thing. You know, they were saying like, you know, with all this stuff going on, all the recent political stuff, they're like, you know, and you can look at that however you want. There's been a million political things going on. It's like people will come out and be like, it's your duty. Your silence is not an option. And in reality, who wins? It's like Twitter. It's like, so I'm morally obliged to like go feed into Twitter and Instagram. It's like, come on, man. It's crazy, dude. That's insane.
Right.
It's like,
no, I think you're spot on. Have you ever read the book called, what is it, Deep Work by Cal Newport?
No, I've saw his TED Talks. He got me onto Jared, what's his name? Something Lanier. I think it's like Jerome Lanier. But I found Cal Newport, watched his TED Talks, and I went into another guy who says kind of a similar thing.
Dude, you would love it. Cal Newport, Deep Work. I mean, it's exactly what we talk about when we show our goals, our pamphlet to our goals. So Matt and I and another group of men, and eventually we'll have to open this up to the Patreon team members, of going through a similar exercise of really focusing on writing down your goals and then focusing all of your efforts on those. As simple as that sounds, it's unbelievable what it actually accomplishes. And Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, goes into that. He basically, you know, his whole story is, and I'm going to butcher it, but basically, you know, hey, I think it was a full professor, which I think is different than, what's the other type of professor?
Adjunct.
There's an adjunct professor. But basically when you cannot get fired anymore, I forget what the term is.
Tenured? Yeah,
tenured professor. I think the hierarchy is like, you know, tenured, you know, professor. Then above that is tenured, normal professor, tenured professor, and then I think the top one is full professor. I might get that wrong, and I'm sorry if it is wrong. But basically, he became whatever the top type of professor was. I think at some prestigious university. Let's call it Duke. I'm probably wrong about that too. But unbelievable progress in a short period of time. He was super young, and he goes through in a very non-arrogant, non-bragging way and says, "This is how I did it." Right? I stopped using. I never got involved in all of these little things that don't move the needle. I didn't major on the minor things. Instead, I wrote the things out that were very important to me, and then I just focused all of my time and effort on that. And I know that sounds incredibly simplistic, but that's what works.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where I got the deep time blocking, you know, that you and I do, which is, you know, dedicate 2 hours or however many, 2 to 4 hours, set the timer, and don't do anything else except for the exact thing that you're trying to accomplish. And that exact thing that you're trying to accomplish at that time should be a filtering down, right, of your actual goals. So every morning, look at your goals and say, okay, this is how, and this time right now is scheduled for health. Right. I'm going to do whatever the relevant tasks are for my health right now. Typically, the way that I break it down is projects, habits, and actions. I try for most of my activity to be habit-based, because habit-based, you don't have to remake a decision, right? Like, oh, what am I going to eat right now? Or what exercise am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do for my health? It's like, nope, I go to the gym. Here's my program. Boom, every single time. Oftentimes, actually most times, if you can't do a habit, then I try to make it an action. So a single action. But if I can't do that, then I make it a project. So projects are groups of actions. And we can always get into that at a later date if you want to. But organizing my life in that way, but always coming back to the goals and saying, what am I really trying to accomplish on a long-term basis? And then nest all of my activities inside that. And dude, I got to tell you, none of scrolling through social media doesn't fit any of them.
Yeah, man. Well, it's
right, zero.
Because people, you know, so you'll start breaking down, like, you know, that you'll bust out the thing. This is my goal sheet. My task for the day should be just filtered directly from my goals, what I'm actually trying to do. And I feel like a lot of the pushback, people will say like, oh man, that's like robotic. I don't want to live like that. And it's like, okay, so what kind of non-robotic activities would you be doing if you're not doing those? And it's like, looking at Facebook. It's like, okay, that's kind of robotic. You're literally
Yep.
interacting with possible robots. They said like between 25 and 50 million Twitter users are bots. So there's people on there talking to people who aren't even real.
I believe it.
Who would be like, no, it's kind of robotic, you know? So I was
That's
like, well,
crazy.
yeah, 25 million to
Crazy.
50 million, and it's only going to increase. There's only going to be more of this as it goes on because it's a very effective strategy to go and get your point across online. If you have the resources and, you know, you're dastardly enough, especially governments do this as well. They're all doing it to each other where it's like, say there's a political issue and, you know, there's a forum. You can deploy a bunch of bots to have a fake argument on Twitter to where your viewpoint wins out, and it's you can establish what seems like a general consensus that's totally artificial. And then other
Wow.
people will read that and naturally be like, huh, I guess they're right, because other people are agreeing too. It's weird, but I'm
Wow.
telling you, we're entering into a very strange future, and the stuff you're describing is like, how can I make my experience as real as possible? It's like, well, dictate what you actually want,
Yep.
and then gear your actions towards that. It's very simple. And again,
Yep.
I'm the king of being distracted. I might be the emperor of being distracted. So it's like it's a struggle, man. And I've done all the loops. I've done all the yeah, but that's this, that's that. And where do you end up? Just sitting down and being like, man, what the fuck? I'm not doing anything.
Yep.
It's like that's the only thing. It's like the only thing that makes sense to do anymore. Of like just think what you want to do, what's important to you, move towards that. Very simple. It's hard. It's very hard, but it's
Yep.
so most rewarding way to spend your day. It's like how do you evade the feeling? This is my personal thing that always messed me up. How do I evade the feeling of laying in bed at night and being like, God, I fucking wasted this day, or like, what am I doing with myself? It's a
Hmm.
lot of anxiety. Not knowing what you're doing for me creates a ton of anxiety. If I sit somewhere and I'm like, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? If I sit down like an actual action thing and just do those things, it cuts out so much of the thought. You can think yourself into oblivion, but it's like, you know, I'm trying to think the right thought that makes me feel good. It's like, well, here's some actions, just do those. And chances are those thoughts just vanish, you know?
Yep.
So it's like, fantastic. I love it, man. It's been the whole goal sheet and everything has been such a huge help for me. And to be honest too, it's like, I have not been implementing it correctly either. It's like, I'm
Mm.
using it. I keep it more kind of in my head loose, but like I need to kind of ratchet that down to the point where it's like my day is even more spelled out because it's like I just feel better. The more direction, the more purpose I have in my day, it's just the better I feel. It's very simple.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a couple things to that. The first thing is you don't have to go for listeners. You don't have to go all in and try it. You know, for 15 hours a day. One of the turning points of Charlie Munger's life, which is Warren Buffett's partner, was Warren Buffett went to Charlie, and Charlie was moderately successful, but he was an attorney. And for those who don't know, Charlie Munger is now, you know, a billionaire. He's one of the richest men in the world. But he said his life changed when Warren said to him, he said, "Hey, how much are you making as an attorney? Let's break it down by hour." And he said, "Okay, great. Let's just call it $50 an hour. We'll give that number." He said, "Okay, I want you to pay yourself. I want you to buy an hour of your time every single day. So take that $50, right? Just know that that's kind of what you're cashing in every time you do this. Take an hour and read, right? Just read about something productive every single day." And he said, what you'll notice is your knowledge will start to compound and accumulate. And Charlie Munger said that's when his life changed because he started working on the things that really mattered and advanced his skill set rather than just being reactive to every moment of the day as an attorney. And then he started, because he increased his intellect, he was able to make fewer but more precise moves. It's that whole Conor McGregor quote, precision beats power. And when you can start to do that, slow things down, almost like Matrix style, and then really identify the things that are important and then focus all of your energy on that, you actually, weirdly enough, you actually come out more energized rather than exhausted at the end of the day. Now, funny enough, you will still do a lot of things, but those things will be important. So any energy that is lost, because your head will hit the pillow at night saying, damn, that was an awesome day. I'm a bit tired from doing so much, but then you kind of get reinvigorated the next day because you accomplished so much. Like, there's a big difference between doing a lot and not accomplishing versus doing a lot and accomplishing a lot. So that's what I'd recommend definitely for people listening to this, but then also realize that the system that I use, I call it ITPAR, ITPAR, imagine, think, plan, act, reflect. And then if you want to add another R, repeat. And that little cycle, I think, has really, really helped me because I did get caught, Matt, in what you were saying was like, okay, well, I'm just doing the same thing every day. It's getting too robotic. Well, it's like, but what I left out was the imagine part, right? And that imagine part is very, very important to me. Like, imagine your life in a better spot. As corny as infomercially as it sounds, imagine this. Imagine I had the life that I wanted. Imagine I had the wife that I wanted. Imagine that I had the career that I want. Imagine all of those things, and to really allow yourself to feel that. And trust me, I'm borderline on the autistic scale. So like me saying to feel something, right? But it gives you that vision, and it allows you to participate in that vision from a feelings standpoint. And then from there, think about it. Okay, imagine what my future is going to be like. Okay, now how can I organize those dreams into actual thoughts? And I start thinking about, okay, what resources do I have? How much time do I have? And so on. And that's where the planning comes in. Okay, I'll plan it. That's where these goals come in, like writing down the plan. And then the actions, right? Actions, habits, and projects from that, and then reflect on it. Okay, what did I get? Right. And then I decide, okay, am I doing this? Do I want to recommit to it? Right. Let's just say I failed, because you're going to fail on the majority of stuff that you try. Right. If it were easy, it wouldn't be fun. So I then say, okay, well, what did I get from it? Did I accomplish what I wanted? Yes or no? If it's no, then do I want to recommit? If it's yes, then do I want to repeat it? And then just keep on doing that cycle and over and over again. But you do it in enough areas of life so that it interests you. It's not like, Matt and I are saying, just go and do one thing in one area. No, if you do that, it's too unidimensional. It will not be attractive to you for a long period of time. Versus if you do it in all areas, or like we always say, like health, wealth, and relationships, and enjoying the process. If you really put effort into those things, health, wealth, relationships, and then importantly, enjoying the process. So have your entertainment, have your fun, but make sure it's intentional in all of those categories. I think if you have that framework, man, and again, we can do it with our individual teams over at Patreon. Another plug for Patreon. Doing it is a game changer. But just like Charlie Munger only tried for an hour a day, take a tiny part of your day and just try it. Right? Just dip your toe in the water. I guarantee you, give it a couple of days and you'll see some pretty major results in areas that you may be struggling with for a while.
Yeah, man. And even just stopping, there's even just stuff to be said for just learning how to stop your day and not being kind of in the current of everything going. Like you were saying, it's being a purely reactive state where it's like, I got to do this, I got to do that. It's like, just stop for 10 minutes and, look at a wall and go back. Nothing really, you don't lose anything. Nothing really changes, but you're flexing the muscle of consciously crafting your day rather than just being pushed along like, a leaf just floating around. And that's, dude, even for me, like I've made a whole point of it to be like, I made a whole point of, the last 10 to 15 years of like setting up my life so I can be in charge of my day. Still every day catch myself being caught up in currents of where I'm like busy working, doing things. Like, I got to do all this, where I have to like stop myself. Like, what do I want to do today? And it's like, do I have the resources to be able to do that? And am I going to like, lose my house? But it's like, I can get so stuck in a behavior pattern where I'm like, I have to keep working. I just keep busybodying myself away from the things that I want to do, but I am working. But in reality, it's like, what do I actually want to do? It's like, oh yeah, I do want to spend a couple hours a day reading and writing. I do want to do this, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, man, that's been something I have to rein myself in on constantly, of being like, oh, this thing pops up, I have to do this, then I'll do that. And it's like, no, man, it's like you were saying, it's like, do you have the resources? Outsource the stuff you don't want to do. The stuff that, it's not going to really move. Like I love that thing of just moving the needle forward. It's like, try to outsource that, try to do this, or just spend as little time as possible, just get it done. And then just, stay doing the things that you find personally meaningful. And it like makes a big difference in your life. And then this is a weird thing for people too. Like you spend your time, if you spend the majority of your life in existence kind of, mentally caged into like, I have to do this, I have to follow the orders, I have to do all the things, which is important. It's hard and almost disorienting to like actually take control of your own reality in life. Like it's actually kind of, it's unsettling. And, I had to get used to that a couple times. So like, even like just in behavioral patterns where it's like, I'm doing these things, they're making me feel not so great, just like my thought patterns, my interaction patterns. And then I started working on them and changing them, especially in relationships. And then things start going well. And I was almost disturbed by that, where I'm like, this isn't real. Like, there's no way this can be the case. And it's like, it is, and for me, it's one of the most rewarding things of just like consciously crafting your existence. There's so many people that are like, oh, I want to be an artist. I want to be this. I want to do all these fancy, funny, fun things, and it's like, okay, well, like focus first just on just like building a life. It's like, it's something that people don't even think of as an activity anymore, because we're in that more reactive state where it's like, I'm doing this, I have to be the best accountant, have to be the best, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but like, what do you do after that? What are you thinking? What are you reading? How are you cultivating yourself? And, that, I think that for me already call my biggest takeaway of like reacting versus cultivating. And it's like, how much time do you spend doing each? So I like that.
You know, it would be an interesting exercise. I've done this many times over the last handful of years, and it's been super helpful, is creating presentations for myself.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. As weird or as nerdy as that sounds, it's like, okay, if I had to go and give a presentation on my health plan, right? Because it forces you to go to a level of detail. If you're going to be speaking in front of 1,000 people and you had to prove why your plan was valuable, or maybe even convince them as to why they should adopt your plan. Dude, I've done that many times over the last handful of years, and that's been a game changer.
that's awesome,
Because
man.
it forces that intentionality that you're talking about, like think through it, right? Like, what are you actually doing? And yeah, you reminded me that is something I think has been a fascinating and very valuable experience for me.
Damn, dude. I mean, you can even span that out in terms of a family or relationship. It's like
Oh,
having problems.
absolutely.
Hit your girlfriend with a PowerPoint, bro. Whew, baby, dude. If you fucking bust up a PowerPoint, put that on the TV. That would, if you TED talked, that would be awesome. I'm dead serious. I love that idea. Of being like, here's
man, try it.
Here's, I mean, it would just disorient too. Like, here's the level of thinking I'm putting into myself, because typically people aren't at all. It's like,
No.
it's just like, well, I'll get into it about stuff where it's like, even sometimes with Brittany, where it's like, well, you get to do this and I get to do that. And it's like, well, what do you want to do? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, let's just figure that out. Like, I'll help you do it. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot too, of like, mutually focused value creation, where it's like, even just say like a professional environment where like you're in charge of hiring a person, or you're wanting to be hired by a place, either way. And rather than this kind of song and dance we do, this super shallow song and dance of like, what are your 5 strengths? What are your 5 weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Of just like throwing all that aside and be like, what do you actually want? Like, obviously I know you want money. I know you want to get paid, but like, what are you going after? What do you want? And just being like, be honest. You might only want to work here for 5 years. I don't care. I wouldn't want to work there in that position forever either. So it's like, what do you want? I'll tell you what I want out of this position. And like, maybe I'll tell you what I can do to help you get to your next step if you do this stuff for, X amount of time, or however long you're actually planning on being here, rather than this like, I want to work here forever and I love this, and this company is very important to me, and I just read the website for 2 minutes before I walked in here, and here's a quote from the website. It's bullshit, man. And it's like,
right.
Just be honest. Be like, dude, I don't care. This job's okay. It's fun. It's not the best thing in the world. Rather than be like, this is a fast-paced, fun environment where it's like, dude, like, I just think everyone would be so much better served to be like, you're a 19-year-old kid. Like, then they're acting as if they're going to be like a 1950s company man for the rest of their life. It's like, no, they're not. They want to, So, and even just, you do that in relationships of like, what do you want? It's like, it's very frustrating to have arguments when it's like, well, what do you want to do? Oh, I don't know. It's like, well, we shouldn't be arguing then. We should be discussing what you want to do. This is just, this frustration around not being, okay with the status quo of the day to day would be alleviated with, you figuring out what you want to do and letting me push that forward for you. We can work, we can synergize. We don't have to pick each other apart about the fact that you don't feel well in some generalized, in some sense, which I do as well. So it's like, and again, really kind of narrowing your scope in terms of like, because it's like, you have one life to live. You can only do so much stuff, which I want to do everything, which is something I have to contend with. But it's like, you have to pick stuff and just go with that. And, and you can always recalibrate and reassess. But like this generalized free floating of just like, and again, the information, I'm staring at my screen. I'm like half conscious during the day. I'm not moving towards my values at all. I'm just trying to avoid bad feelings all day and reacting and trying to not get in trouble or be bad in some sense of the thing that I'm doing. And there's nothing coming from the internal locus of me that's manifesting outward. I'm just kind of it's the in that talk of the Stephen Hayes thing is like, if you think about it, are you like this or are you kind of like this? And like, this is kind of like generative. This is just trying to like avoid bad things. And it's like, look, bad things are coming no matter what. So you might as well move in a direction that you like. It's pretty simple.
Did you drop that bomb? You dropped the what do you want? That is and I hope the listeners please focus on that. Answering that question is a door that can be opened. That just that's where all opportunity lies. And 99% of people are not willing to ask and answer that question. What do you want?
Yeah. What would you don't like what's going on right now? What would be the good thing? I don't know. And it's like, well, I'm not going to argue about a thing that doesn't even exist, really. It's like, it's like I'm more focused on trying to build the thing that makes you feel better, makes us, whatever, in any situation. It's like, because, dude, job relations, I think, are almost just as intimate, obviously they shouldn't be that intimate, but like they are, it's a pretty intimate thing. It's like, you're standing atop of somebody's dreams more or less. And you can act as a very, a good force in their life and a very honest one. And it doesn't have to be good. You can work for 6 months and be like, dude, you're just not cutting the mustard, man. Like, we made a deal and it's just not happening. So it's like, peace out. That's just as important to be able to do that.
Not cutting mustard. Did you get that from Mr. McCusker? From Papa McCusker?
I'm like drowning in old man sayings. I get them all the time.
That's awesome. You're not cutting the mustard, brother.
Not cutting the mustard, dude.
But dude, no, I have found that literally it's amazing to me, and almost on a weekly basis, how often humans do not want to say what they want. They just want to point the fingers at what other people say they want. And it might encroach on this vague understanding of what they themselves think they want. Everybody has a damn opinion, but very few people are willing to be decisive, say what they want, and take action on it. And I experience that literally on a weekly basis.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, think about the amount of people who are willing to speak publicly. It's like, I would say it's very rare that people doing the thing. Probably even more rare what you're saying, like people who can actually say what they want, take action on it, and just like, let the chips fall where they are, rather than trying to avoid success, avoid doing something and being publicly unsuccessful in some way, shape, or form. It's like, you got to be able to blow up a bunch of times. It's not that big of it. Nothing bad happens, man. It's like nothing bad. I've screwed up more things than I can even fathom to try to remember or count. And it's like
same
things trying to go towards a positive direction, even like just they go into the way. And I still have to deal with this. It's like, all right, I made a goal. And this is the funny thing too with goals. It's like, especially long-term goals, is like, I set a goal to make money I just wanted to make money online and work from home. That was a very generalized goal. And I knew I liked to do that with like the comedy stuff and, just content creation in some level. When I started doing it, it was like total, like, voice in the dark of a million people. Like, this is totally futile. This is kind of worthless. You do it for 10 years. When you do a long-term goal, it's funny because then it's like, so you set a goal. Say I set a goal when I'm 25, let's say 24 for number's sake. Set a goal when I'm 24. As a 34-year-old man, I'm inhabiting the dreamed reality of a 24-year-old. And I'm saying, all right, now as a 34-year-old man, what would I like my next 10 years to be? So by the time if you do actually realize the things that you're going after, you inhabit them as an older person, you might be like, all right, this is cool. Shout out to my 24-year-old self for dreaming this up. But like, I'm not really with certain aspects of this. And I'm going to like, reconfigure myself again and try to inhabit another situation. So it's kind of cool. And, even in a bad way, like I was living at 24 years old, I was living in the cockeyed dreams of my 18-year-old self, which were just like, I was totally figuring out like, oh, these are completely untenable and horrible. Like the pillars of my like thinking and reasoning were just completely corroded. And now I'm living in that now. And, I was that age and just completely miserable. At 26 years old, I was miserable. Like crazily miserable. And it was like I would watch stand-up comedy and shut it off like a bad guy from a movie. I'd like, turn it off. Like it would just I was like absolutely miserable, and it's like it scares me to think about how many people spend their whole and just their life is an arc just slowly into misery and death. And it's like it is a reality for a lot of people. Nobody wants to talk about that, but that is the case for a lot of people. They slowly just let themselves go physically. They completely don't pursue things they find meaningful. And then they just completely justify their existence by being like, everything's unfair. Life sucks. And then you die. They set up all these rules in their head that they, other people will commiserate with them and be like, yeah, that is just the reality. And it's like, that's a bad way to go, man. That's a bad way to go. And I think people should fight against that physically, mentally, everything all at once. Relate like, oh, you know how girls are, marriage is, it's just, it's not going to work out. It's impossible. And it's like, it cannot work out, but that's not, you're just setting up a rule in your head, and this whole idea of like rule following, of like setting up like, absorbing rules from wherever you're at, your family, society, people, blah, 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 and just being like, oh, this is how it is. And it's like, is it? It might not be, and people do this unconsciously. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, I think whenever you get advice from somebody, number one, the advice should always be, it should have a disclaimer. It's like, hey, this is not advice. This is me giving you my opinion based off of my circumstances. And then what you should say to that person giving you advice, because I've experienced the same thing that you're saying, Matt, like especially back on the East Coast, like, oh, don't get married, don't have a girlfriend, like, oh, blah, 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 like all this old man wisdom. 99% of it, what you should say to the person is, okay, well, do you now, and did you have throughout your entire life, intention to actually put effort into building great things in your life? Yes or no? And if they had to be honest, most of the time the answer is no. So it's like, okay, I'd rather not have your opinion then, because it's going to go through the filter of just this old grumpy dude who never really put a lot of effort into anything. So you kind of just let the winds of chance blow you along. And of course you're old and grumpy, right? Like, you're 80 pounds overweight, you smoke, you drink, you do all of these things. How on earth could I take advice from you? But the problem is we don't put ourselves through that filter. So instead we just say, it's like, well, Uncle Rick says to never even get married. And, Uncle Rick's right because he's Uncle Rick. Right. I think it's so important to understand where people are coming from and recognize that very few people, and that's why we want to have this podcast. It's create intentional, productive conversations. And it's not always going to be pretty. It's not a straight line. It's going to be a zigzag for sure, but come in with the prerequisite mindset of I am out for life to make progress. And however that plays out, like my power and my effort will always be focused on making progress in every domain. And when you start with that, it's really hard to lose over time, Doesn't mean that you don't reconcile, right? You don't say, okay, well, shit, now my 26-year-old self looks back at my 18-year-old self and says, okay, I need to tweak some things. That's okay. That's called life.
Yeah.
But not having a plan and not having intentionality around your actions is just crazy. That will lead you most likely to disaster.
Well, even think about the idea of say theoretical Uncle Rick who tells you all this stuff that, you're like, well, that guy's pretty miserable and he's hitting me with like the 10 commandments. But it's like, it's crazy to think about say Uncle Rick Sr. who just took all of his ideas and here you go, little Rick. And little Rick, just these ideas transmit it into another person and just drag them down into the dirt. And they're just like, here, take these. And you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, keep it to yourself. I don't want that. And you go into again, now it's it's not just used to be we had one or two people around us who were consulting us. Now we have just this torrent of information and people are just opening themselves up and letting it fly through them. And it's what of that sticking in your head and what's the residue of that? And, it's something people have to be really, really conscious about. And it's and again, like you were saying, the face, the political, the cyber politics and getting political online, which is just kind of strange if you think about it, enacting online political action. And it's wouldn't you be better served community, organizing at a community level if that's something you're really after? And it's you're going to sway the national discourse with your 87 followers on Twitter. It's you're not going to do that. You'd be better off. You're just not. You'd be better off, just organizing locally and figuring out what you could do there. I really do think people who exhibit an interest in politics should just jump into local politics, dude. If you're into it, get into it. No, you're just not going to do anything from your phone other than just dude, have you ever looked at a Donald Trump tweet?
No.
Go in the comment section underneath it. It's just people fighting online about, it's insane. It's insane. And again, how many of them, which again, a lot of the people who are commenting aren't even real. They're bots. So it's people are spending their times underneath a president's tweet and putting a lot of their energy just to pop up underneath it in this online fight where there's no real, even too, it's we live in an age now where it's even your facts can be disputed on some level. So it's so it's dude, I don't know, man. I just, people who want to fact their way out of this, it's that's kind of tough too. It's you can have a whole set of information, a whole thing set up and just still have that being called into question, 4 years out. And, I'm not saying to can be completely relativist where it's I can't believe anything, but it's I don't see the value in those kind of you're interacting with the president. It's dude, how about you just get your schedule down before you start trying to get in the president's mailbox and being well, here, Mr. President, here's what I think. It's well, dude, I don't think you're using your time that well.
Completely agree. What do you think, if you had to pick one exercise for people to do to go on an information diet and focus more on the valuable stuff rather than the fleeting, superficial stuff, what is one exercise you think the listeners can do?
This is kind of in line with that, but this is something I was thinking about doing. I think I'm going to do it this week where I'm going to just pick things that I typically wouldn't pop up for me, whether it's just my personal tastes and political stuff that I very much disagree with. And I'm going to try to only consume stuff outside of my personal kind of informational universe. So I'm going to try to look at the others, I'm not very much contrarian against any other side, but it's I'm going to for 1 week, just only listen to information that goes completely against the stuff that I'm naturally into.
Hmm.
I just want to see what happens. I don't know, just because that's the other thing too. It's hard for people to admit that, like, say, like, let's just, for the sake of talking, there's like you can get in the political argument of like what's called like social justice warriors and like hardcore Trumpers. And it's like the social justice, they're both like very rigid, kind of closed-minded personalities for the most part. If you're just like Donald Trump or die, or you're just like anti-racism, social justice or die, in my opinion, they're kind of the inverse of each other. It's like, they stand on like different, poles of political thinking, but they're very much unified in their kind of closed-mindedness and like inability to take on another person's situation, or just think that like they might not have all the answers,
Hmm.
So I think what I'm going to try to do this week is just look at stuff that I don't really disagree with and just, just take that information in and see how I react to it.
Awesome. I dig it. For me, I'm going to say, and I've done this before, I'm going to do it again, and it's really outstanding. Instead of going on my phone for little things like checking emails, et cetera, actually, I may even take my emails off of my phone.
Ooh.
And only access on my computer, so it limits the time, because I do the same thing, right? Roll over bed, like as soon as I wake up, check my emails, because I deleted all social media apps off my phone. But now, instead of doing that, anytime I get the itch to go on my phone and just randomly check emails, I'm going to read a book. And I've done that before. And man, when you're committed to that. So one book that I like to do that is, what is it called? It's called The Laws of Success by Napoleon Hill. Sounds corny, but it's a phenomenal book. Literally every single time I read it, even if I only read 3 sentences, I get something from it that I can apply towards my life. And so I'm going to get back on that. I want to try it again. And I want to thank you, because one of the biggest takeaways that I got from today's conversation was ask yourself and define what you want. And I always have to come back to that, because the fundamentals, it's about coming back to the fundamentals repeatedly. But man, that's such a great question. And it sounds so subtle, but guys, if you take that and just say, okay, I'm having trouble in my life right here, whether it be relationships or at work, et cetera, it's like, wait a second. Are you just getting mad at the other person because they're not giving you what you want, but you haven't even defined really what you want? So it's like, ask yourself, what exactly do you want?
This is something I had to take away. Sorry.
No,
that's awesome. Have you defined how you would like to be treated or interacted with? Clearly, have you actually that was something I got like slapped in the face with when they're like, well, have you told her how you'd like to be interacted with? And I was like, I don't have to tell her that. She should know. And it's like, God damn it.
Yeah.
But even in general, all of them, it's like, you're not being treated well. Have you expressed how you'd like to be? And people are like, no. So yeah, I like that. From the thing that I always, it's like just like trying to, like, it's one thing I can sit here all day and think about it. I'm like, oh, cool. I thought about, what I want, but like operationalizing that. And that's where I think, you shine amongst all stars, dude, of just being able to operationalize that and put that into practice and actually do the thing. Cause I'll sit there all day and be like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. And it's like, I'll go take a dump and look at my phone. But like but I am going to, this week is going to, the takeaway from this is I'm going to make an even more conscious and solid effort of operationalizing and just like putting things down. And like, actually, I'm going to by next week, and I will be held to my words, because if I don't do this, it'll be very apparent. Come up with like, here's what I did, here's what I got done, just to give, I think, give people a little taste too, because I would like to eventually kind of team this up and have a separate side of this that is a very, granular, on like a Patreon level, of just kind of like in like a granular way of like, this is what I set out to do this week. This is what I get done, checking in like that. And that would just help me, honestly, more than anything. It's like,
100%, man, dude. We should kick that off for sure.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk behind the scenes about how to launch that. But yeah, that's where, what we talk about in this podcast is more of like the philosophy at the religion level. But then, it's like, are you actually doing it at the tactical level? And those discussions need to be had, and accountability, et cetera. That's the name of the game. That's how the stuff gets done. You need both, but at the end of the day, you're not going to get the results if you actually don't do the work.
Exactly.
Cool, brother. Appreciate it as always. And until next time.
Definitely, man.